Ted, I think we actually have an email
that came in. We'll go ahead and knock that one out.
Let's go ahead and put that up. All right, this is, who's this from? It doesn't say.
It's from Renee.
Oh, from Renee. Thank you, Renee. We just bought a 4-foot above ground pool. We have a chain link fence around our yard, but every kid on the block knows we have this pool now. What precautions should we take? I was thinking about putting the cover on overnight or when we're gone to make it less inviting. It goes on, should I have the neighbor sign a waiver? We rent and do not want to be held liable or cause my landlord a headache. And that is from Renee. So that a lot going on there when she threw in the rent, the landlord. And
I mean, obviously, you need to make sure in the first instance that it's allowed with your landlord. I'm sure they're going to want that because that's something that can heavily impact their property insurance rates, your rental insurance rates if you have rental insurance, but you should have. In particular, if you're worried about liability here, that's something that a lot of folks don't think about, Les, that if you're a renter, the landlord may have insurance on the property, but that's going to just solely cover the structure and their own personal liability. If you want to have, in the first instance, coverage for your contents, you're going to need a renter insurance to cover that, but also that would protect you from liability if you were to have some sort of suit here. I know that's not exactly what you asked, Renee, but that's something to think about in the first instance to protect yourself. But with respect to doing things to minimize your risk or exposure, I know one thing that was mentioned there was having individuals sign releases. I don't know if anyone has ever tried to do that with a neighbor. That usually is not going to be met with a lot of success, and it's a little awkward. And I really don't even know that it's absolutely necessary in a case like this, because one of the things that Renee pointed out was that they've got a fence. Right. It is a fenced-in property. Now, if you had this above-ground pool or just a swimming pool in general, and your property was not fenced, then you absolutely could be looking at potential liability. It's what they used to call in the law an attractive nuisance. And you just mentioned kids in the neighborhood know they have it. Kids like to get in pools even if you're not there. So putting a fence up around it, creating some sort of a barricade, that is a reasonable thing to do. And that's really what the law expects you to do, is to take reasonable steps in order to minimize some sort of injury or harm that might occur. Now, what about, you have this fence, what about if somebody hops the fence or jumps the fence? What sort of protections does Renee have then? In that type of situation, you're looking at a trespasser situation. So that in that type, you have a lower standard of care that you're obligated to. Essentially, you don't need to do anything intentionally to harm them or be what's called kind of grossly negligent. So obviously, if they get in the pool, you can't have traps or anything to try to any kind of the old the gun that would shoot when you open the door type thing. Those things are not allowed and never going to be okay in a scenario like this. So don't do anything like that. You are doing reasonable care by putting the fence up. Not a bad idea to cover it when you're out. That's another positive sign. But in the first instance, make sure. I would talk to the neighbors and let them know, hey, if you're going to allow them to come, make sure you're doing it while you're home, while they're being supervised, because kids will be kids, and make sure that you're protecting yourself. I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, we live in Florida. There's a lot of pools all over the place. It should be reasonable, use common sense. Right. Make sure kids can't wander in the backyard and fall in. You've got the fence, you should be fine. The waiver is probably not going to work.
No,
first off,
particularly with minors.
Sign it.
Well, just from an awkward standpoint, but with respect to a minor, you got to have a very explicit language that's governed by the statute in there, and having a kid sign a waiver is not valid. They can't contract, so you'd have to have the parents sign it. So it's a difficult process to do, and many times can be navigated around. So better to do the appropriate things with the fence, the covering, talking to the neighbors, and just making sure people are supervised if and when you allow them to get in the pool.
Yeah, and the first thing you said is really the best advice that I think we could give anybody, whether you're a homeowner or you rent, is make sure you get that renter's policy.
Get that renter insurance.
Like you said, like Ted said, the landlord's going to have insurance to protect the structure if something happens, but if you have people over, if somebody gets hurt on your premises, if you have a pet, a dog that bites somebody, If you have a pool
Right.
and somebody gets hurt in the pool, those renters policies can provide you with liability coverage. So just because you don't own the home doesn't mean that you cannot be insured against potential losses. So
Right.
That's always great advice.